want? Okay, you good? Yes. All right, good. Okay, so hi and welcome to everyone. Good evening. I'm so blown away by the response and how many beautiful women are here to learn Torah tonight. It's such a beautiful effort, and thank you. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight. I thought we were going to just have a small, cozy share at the Soul Center, but this is so special and truly shows our dedication as Rachel, our mother's children. So just a few thank yous to start with. Of course, an enormous thank you to AC, who's always just my right hand, and without him, nothing's too much, and I'm so grateful. A massive thank you to Chaim from Syncopa, to Gary, our photographer, who's always happy to do another mitzvah. If you guys need a photographer for your events, Gary's your man.
Please.
To our beautiful Wendy and Brett and Shayna, you guys are incredible. So grateful that we've met you, and we'll talk soon about your beautiful brother and how tonight's dedicated to him. So thank you for all your help and for helping us with tonight. Thank you also to Claudia Felice, who's not here now, but did help us a lot today. Thank you to Randwood Council with a bit of arm twisting, who allowed us to use this space. And thank you to the beautiful ladies, Gabby and the other Heidi and whoever else helped us just before. And also a massive thank you to Sapiwe. Couldn't do it without Sapiwe, that's for sure. And last but not least, a massive thank you to Hashem. Everything is a blessing from him. And before I speak tonight, like always, I pray to Hashem and I say, listen, I'm just a vessel for your message, and I hope that, that's what I can share. So tonight is dedicated to Tuvia Mordechai ben Meir Yosef. It's dedicated to the elevation of his soul, a beautiful man that was taken much too early. And in discussing with Wendy about him, I've learned so much, and I thought it was so appropriate that, I happened to be that this Shabbos coming up is Rachel and Meir Yosef, and that's why I've chosen that topic. But actually it seems like they shared quite a lot of character traits. It seems that he was so selfless, and he was always thinking of others. He didn't like a lot of attention. Wendy says, I'm not sure if he would like tonight that so many people were coming out for him. And I said, you know what, things change a little when you get up there. Your priorities are a little different. But I hope that we can bring him a lot of joy and peace tonight, and I'm sure just the way you and your beautiful family live is brings him so much joy. So it should be a soul elevation to him tonight, all the learning that's in his merit. Amen. So today's shared topic is Secrets of Rachel, Lessons from our matriarch. So we know we have three fathers, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and we have the four mothers, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. And even though they all lived quite a few thousand years ago, we all have a very special connection with them today, even till this very special moment. The reason why we chose this topic, as I said, is because this Shabbos will be the 11th of Cheshvan, and that is Rachel's yahrzeit. And even though we have four mothers, Rachel is the most connected to us. She's known as like the quintessential Jewish mother. And we're going to learn about and discuss why that is. But we took, as I said, everyone's Hebrew names, and that's because we're going to send them to her grave for blessings. And they'll be there on her yahrzeit, and someone will pray and read all the names out. And we will learn, and we're told that Rachel still cries and beseeches on behalf of her children. And so my prayer is that all our prayers are answered, and we should all be blessed. L'chaim. I apologize for the lack of alcohol. You'll have to talk to Randwood Council about that. Okay, so we'll discuss a few different ideas, and hopefully, even if you just leave tonight with one message that resonates and inspires you, then that's good. So let's recap the story of where we meet Rachel in the Torah. So if you remember the story, Jacob had stolen the birthright blessings instead of his brother Esau. And he's worried Esau's going to come home and he's going to kill him. So he runs for his life. And where does he run? They have family in another town. It's not great family. It's, his mother's toxic brother. But mishpacha is mishpacha, right? So he runs to Haran. And he runs to his uncle there. His uncle is Lavan. Lavan is married to a woman named Adina. And that's where he goes. And as Yaakov arrives in Haran, he sees a few shepherds mingling around a well. And he asks them, what's going on here? And they say, there's a very, very heavy stone that covers the well. And it's very hard for them to move it because it's so heavy. So what they do is they wait there until all the shepherds come and all the cattle and everything. And eventually, between everyone, they're able to shift this very, very heavy rock. And as he's having this discussion, suddenly, in the distance, he notices this woman coming towards him. And even from a distance, he senses this magnificent beauty. And he turns to them and he says, who's this woman? And they say, she's Rachel. She's the daughter of Lavan. And he suddenly gets a surge of adrenaline, and he's able, on his own, to push the stone off of the well. I was actually thinking, I can't believe Disney hasn't made a movie about this. It's like, you can hear the soundtrack, right? It's like the soundtrack slowly, he's sliding the stone off as Rachel is coming in. I can literally visualize it. Anyway, so the Torah tells us he sees Rachel, and they talk, and he sees her, he talks to her, he kisses her, and he cries. And the sages ask, it's quite dramatic. I mean, we're not talking about a Hollywood movie here, we're talking about Jacob, we're talking about, he was a tzaddik, he was a righteous man, ultimately he wouldn't have known her from before. What was all this about? It was quite dramatic, and especially that the Torah is never just a story. Every word that the Torah shares always is because there's a lesson for us today. It's not just a nice storybook for us to read. So why did this happen, and why did the Torah see it so important to tell us about this great emotion and crying and kiss that went on? And it's funny because when I thought about this, I thought, well, it's not such a question. I remember when AC proposed to me, I cried, I sobbed, it's so much so that AC said, is that a yes? I was like, I don't think it's such a question. When you see someone or you meet someone and you know that they're your soulmate and this is going to be your life together, I mean, that's emotional. But that was exactly it. He saw Rachel, and he saw in her, he saw completion in her. He had a sense, he was a tzaddik, he knew more than just the average person knew, and he felt her wholeness. He saw her beauty not only on the outside, which apparently she was magnificent, but besides that, he saw her beauty on the inside. He saw that she was a really, really special person. And he also, the sad thing that he saw that also made him cry was, he saw in the future, he knew that she'd be his wife, and he realized that he wouldn't be buried alongside her. And he cried. The Torah says that's why he cried. So let's understand what kind of person Rachel was. We know that she was generous and giving. She wasn't entitled at all. It's interesting to note that she was the one taking care of her father's sheep. She was bringing the sheep to the well. In those days, the shepherds were all males. Rachel was one of the first female shepherds. The Torah mentions she had no inner torment. She was like a beautiful and whole person. That's what the Torah says. And she represented something in Hasidus that we call malchus, which is like royalty, but in psychological terms we call it like dignity. She was graceful and really dignified, like internally. She was also a communicator. She was extremely charismatic and appealing to others, and she had quite an influence, like when she would meet people. The Torah also says that with Rachel there was a great light, and every environment she was in, she illuminated with her presence. And this kind of explains Yaakov's unusually dramatic reaction to her. Moments after meeting her, as we said, he kissed her and he raised his voice and he wept. And Yaakov realized that he was going to grow a family with this woman, and this family would become the chosen nation, and that this nation would be a light unto the world. And he realized that his 12 children would have to uphold the torch of morality and spirituality in a world that would often resist this message. And here was Rachel. She was like a perfect character suited for this job. She could mother a family and children who could do this role. And so that was, explained why Yaakov had that whole emotional experience. So Yaakov then, he goes to his uncle Lavan, as they did in those days. I mean, they went to ask sort of permission from the father, and they agreed that he's going to marry her, and he says he's going to take over the shepherd job. So he decides he's going to work for 7 years, and that will be his dowry for Rachel. And of course, he also wanted to do it so he could replace Rachel doing this work. It was quite a demanding role, obviously. And the Torah says the time passed for him, these 7 years, like a few days because of his love for her. And, maybe he reminded himself, anytime there was any difficulty, maybe it was very cold, it was very hot, or there was wolves or bandits, the Torah says that maybe, or one Medrash says that maybe he was thinking, at least my beloved is spared of this. I'm taking this for her, and this gave him strength. I think this is like a true love story. I think Disney's got nothing on Yaakov and Rachel. Anyway, so realizing that Lavan, Rachel's father, was a trickster, he was, not an honest, straight person, they decided to make a deal between them that they would have certain signs that when Rachel came to the wedding and Yaakov came, they would know it's Rachel. But on the night of the wedding, Rachel saw that her older sister Leah was being led to the wedding. And she thought to herself, my sister's going to be disgraced. So very quickly she ran to her sister and she gave her sister the pre-arranged signs that she had made with Yaakov. And obviously through this she saved her sister from enormous humiliation, and even to the point that she gave Leah tips that would prevent Yaakov in any way realizing that his veiled bride was any other than Rachel. Rachel and Leah were identical twins. Rachel was more beautiful, but I suppose with a veil and at night in the olden days with just candles, I don't know. I know, I've always wondered, like, how'd you get the one woman? But anyway, Yaakov, I don't know, maybe his eyesight wasn't great. Anyway, we don't ask questions, right? Anyway, so Rachel shared this secret with Leah with no ulterior motive. Even though this was her basher, this was, her true love, and she didn't know at this point that she'll get to marry him, okay? We all know the story, right? We know the end of the story that she does get to marry Yaakov later. But at this point, it was not known to her that she would marry. So ultimately, she was giving up her husband, the love of her life, to her sister. And remember how I said Rachel, she personified dignity, so much so that she also nurtured it in others. And she couldn't bear to let her sister's dignity be stripped. So she gave up her own comfort, and not just her own comfort, her husband, their love, their future, and everything after waiting 7 years. I mean, when I think about it, I think Rachel could have said, my dad is Lavan, my brother's Besuel, I come from a crappy family, toxic family, this is my ticket out. Forget it. It's not the time where I have to start looking out for my sister. I finally get this new life with a normal man. Let me just take the ticket and run. But she didn't. She didn't, claim victimhood, anything like that. She decided that this is what she needed to do. And she gave up on the prospect of marrying him entirely. Anyway, it's hard for me to imagine a girl on her wedding night willing to give up her own beloved one for someone else, especially her sister. So, as we know, she rose above and beyond of her duty and all that, and did this for her sister. But the Torah, we say this is who Rachel was. This is what she stood for. I'm sure some of you wondered what happened that next morning in the home of Yaakov and Leah. Let me tell you, I wouldn't have minded being a fly on the wall. You think our marriages need therapy? Oof! Try thinking of Leah that next morning. The Talmud Megillah tells us the exact conversation that went down. The Talmud says, when the morning came, there was Leah. Until then, she was not Leah, meaning Yaakov did not realize she was Leah until he saw her in the light of morning. I don't know, Rivka. How?
It's a male thing, right?
Blame it on that. The following morning, when Yaakov awoke and he realized this trickery, he was furious with his new bride. He said to her, you're the daughter, you're a deceiver, and you're the daughter of a deceiver. All night long, I called you Rachel, and you responded as if you were Rachel. So what did Leah say? Quite a chutzpahdik answer, if you ask me. She says, is there a teacher without a pupil? Your example taught me that it's permissible to lie for a good cause. 21 years ago, your father sent Esau to bring him food, and you rushed in to give it to him so you would get the blessings. Did not your own father call you Esau, and you answered him? You called me too, and I answered you. She was obviously referring to the time that Yaakov took the birthright from his brother Esau. I'm not sure if the message is karma or what's right for you is right for me. I'm not sure what the message is there, but I just thought it was an interesting part of the story to share. So what do we do at a Jewish wedding today? We remember the lesson from Yaakov, and we cover the bride's face. This is well known. But wouldn't it make more sense to uncover the bride's face? If you think about it, the custom should be lead in the bride with a cover and have the groom uncover her and make sure as hell you're marrying the right girl. But no, we cover. Why do we cover? It's a big lesson in our marriages today. Because when we get married, we're not only marrying the fun-loving, very slim, always perfect Rachel, who we dated and fell in love with. We're also marrying the Leah that's inside every individual. I'm using Rachel and Leah, but this works both ways with our husbands too. For us, our husbands. We're marrying the Leah that's inside every individual too. The inner conflict, the weaknesses, the insecurities, the challenges, because everyone has those too. And as a marriage grows, you find that it's precisely these aspects of your spouse that require you to go beyond your ego and make you into a better person, and forces us to grow into a better spouse and build a stronger marriage. So in our connection and relationship in marriage, and in our connection with Hashem, is it something that flows naturally from our heart and souls like the love between Yaakov and Rachel? Or is it something we have to work for, something we achieve in a somewhat artificial manner, similar to the connection between Yaakov and Leah? Well, I would say it's actually both. On the one hand, if we only do what we feel like doing, we can enter some very dangerous territory. And we definitely need that humility and acceptance that allows us to do good for our spouses, our kids, and God, even sometimes when we don't feel like it. But obviously, it also shouldn't be all this way all the time. We should feel the passion and want sometimes too. So to continue the story, Rachel eventually marries Yaakov, and between the many wives, they build a large household. And they have 11 sons, which are part of the 12 tribes. And Rachel is now expecting the 12th son and the youngest of the tribe, Binyamin. And her labor is unfortunately very difficult. And as we read, as she cries and gives birth and names her son, she sadly dies at the young age of 36 years old, the youngest to die of all the matriarchs and patriarchs. And she leaves Binyamin as a newborn. It's interesting to note that she was the one who passed away youngest, but she's the one who's had the greatest impression on the Jewish people for years after. Now, rather than bury her in the family burial place, the ancestral plot, where Adam and Eve are buried, where Abraham and Sarah are buried, Isaac and Rivka buried, Yitzhak and Rivka are buried, Yaakov buries her on the side of the road. It seems so lonely, so sad. Why would he bury her on the side of the road? If you've been to Hebron in Israel, you'll see that they're all buried there in Ma'arat HaMachpelah. As I said, Adam and Eve, Sarah and Abraham, all of them. But Rachel is not buried there. Rachel is buried in somewhere called Beit Lechem, and it's literally, it's almost still the side of the road. Obviously, it's become prominent and people go there to pray, but it's sort of random where it is. So let's discuss how and why this happened. So as I said earlier, Rachel is the quintessential Jewish mother. And she knew that in the far, far future, the Jews would be going down to exile after the destruction of the temple, and it would be a terrible, terrible time for them. It would be a terribly low morale, and she wanted to be there for her children in these terrible times. She knew they would pass by Beit Lechem in chains as slaves, and she thought, the least I can do is be there for my children so they can cry to me, and I can be a comfort to them, and then I can fight and beseech on their behalf to God. And I was thinking how it takes a really good mother to be there for our children in good times, but it's definitely harder to be there for our children as a support in their harder times. I think it's much harder to be that container when they're struggling than when things are good. It's really easy to be your child's cheerleader and you're standing there and they're acing all their exams and they're feeling good and they're excited about life and they're happy and they've got friends. It's easier to parent that way, but it's when our children are really struggling, that's when it's like really being able to sit with our children, sit in their pain, hold it for them, right? So Rachel being buried in Beit Lechem on the outskirts of Israel, this was ideal. She said the Jews will pass by and I'll plead on their behalf. And as happened, when the Jews were going down to exile, they were crying, they were broken. They had served idols, the temple had gone. It was just a really not good time, and God obviously was not thrilled with them. And everyone was trying to fight and beseech on the Jews' behalf. And the Torah says, Rachel weeps over her children as the temple lay in ruins and the Jews were being led as chained slaves into exile. Abraham came before God and he said, Master of the universe, when I was 100 years old, you gave me a son. And when my son Yitzchak was 37 years old, you told me, raise him as a sacrifice before me. I overcame my natural mercy and I tied him down myself. Will you not remember my devotion and have mercy on my children? And God is silent. Next, Yitzchak tries. Yitzchak says, when my father said, I need to offer you up to God, I did not hesitate. I accepted my fate, and I extended my neck to be slaughtered. Will you not remember my strength and have mercy on my children?" God was quiet. Then Yaakov says, "Yaakov, I worked for 20 years in the house of evil Lavan, and when I left, my brother Esau came to harm me. I suffered all my life raising my children." You know all the drama with the brothers and Yosef and all that. "Now they are being led like sheep to the slaughter in the hands of their enemies. Won't you remember all the pain and suffering and redeem my children?" God was quiet. And Moshe stood up. He said, "Wasn't I a loyal shepherd for Israel for 40 years? I ran before them in the desert like a horse. When the time came to enter Israel, you decreed that I would die in the desert. I didn't even get to go into Israel, my greatest dream. Now they're going into exile. Won't you listen to my crying over them now?" And God remained silent. Suddenly the Torah says, Rachel lifted her voice. She said, "Master of the universe, you know that Yaakov loved me intensely and worked for 7 years in order to marry me. When the time of my marriage came, my father switched my sister for me. I didn't begrudge my sister, and I didn't let her be shamed, but I even revealed to her the secret signs that Yaakov and I had arranged. If I, a mere mortal, was not willing to humiliate my sister and was willing to take a rival into my own home, how could you, the eternal and compassionate God, be jealous of simple idol worship that has no true existence that was brought into your home? Would you cause my children to be in exile on this account?" Immediately, God's mercy was aroused, and he responded, "For you, Rachel, I will bring Israel back to their place." This is a unique aspect of Rachel. She was willing to forego personal elevation of being buried in the cave of Machpelah in order to help her children. Furthermore, these were children many, many generations removed, and the children, these were not her children, these were great-great-great-grandchildren, and they were in a very, very low spiritual state, to such a degree that they were sent into exile. Yet, for these children who had sinned and been exiled, Rachel gave up her special merit of being buried next to her beloved Yaakov for thousands of years in order to be of help to her children. And this is the reason she got the promise from Hashem that your children will return to their border, to Israel. Since she gave up a great personal merit for her children, she was repaid measure for measure. And her children will be returned to the borders of Israel when Mashiach comes. What was incredible about Rachel, though, that I find personally so incredible, is she had this quality of self-sacrifice, but without measure or resentment. I know with myself often, we can do something for our child, and then it comes with that resentment. It's like we have to let the child know, I remember one mum saying to me, and she was telling her child, "You better focus on your HSC and you better study more because I've given up to travel with Dad so I could be here for your HSC." And I'm sure all of us can think of examples. It's like I can think of even like asking my child to get me a diaper from upstairs, and the child says no. And it's like, "Fine, I'll do it." Stomp, stomp, stomp up the stairs. The child has to feel this, That's not called, this is not self-sacrifice when we do things for our children with this. I'm not saying it's not self-sacrifice, but it's like sort of with an anger or a resentment. This is not what Rachel was talking about. She didn't either suffer from something called martyr syndrome. "Do you know what I did for you? I stood on my feet cooking for hours and hours." We all know about this as Jewish mothers, right? We didn't get it from Rachel, let me tell you. I don't know who we're going to blame, but we didn't get it from her. So Rachel gave up herself completely, selflessly, and unconditionally. She was truly happy to be buried on the side of the road. She was happy to give this to her sister, her husband to her sister. She was happy to be buried on the side of the road on the way to the city of Ephrat, so she could be of assistance one day to her precious children. And that's the challenge, to be able to sacrifice something personal, but to be completely, wholeheartedly happy with that decision. Rachel saw it as a privilege and a power that she was able to be there for her children. She gave up her greatest honor of being buried next to her beloved Yaakov and the other holy, incredible Jewish mothers and fathers just to be there for her children. As mothers, we all do so much for our family, and often without recognition. We inherit this from Rachel. It's also an enormous lesson for us all on how to believe in our children. No matter what Rachel believed in her great-grandchildren, they were sinners, as I said, and they were not exactly shining knights, but she believed in their innate goodness, their potential, And that is the beauty of a true Yiddish mama. Rachel, our mother, she set the example and she paved the way for all Jewish women to follow. Her care and devotion for her children knew no boundaries, and she received God's own promise of redemption. From here, every Jewish woman can learn to nurture a child's inner dignity. Dignity is a feeling of confidence and security that a person makes them feel inherently worthy and indispensable. There are so many things that a mother needs to do, but primarily and essentially what a mother needs to do is nurture that dignity in our children. We don't need to instill it because every child is born with it, but we need to just nurture it. By believing in the innate goodness of our children, understanding that they carry a piece of God inside of them, a godly soul, and that's what defines them. Not their mistakes, nor their challenges, none of that defines them. Yes, they're responsible for their mistakes and challenges, and they have to learn and grow from them. But when we look at our children, we want to look at them with the beautiful, unconditionally loving eyes of our mother Rachel, looking at them for their godly potential. Rachel beseeches God on every person's behalf to help rid our pain and redeem us from exile. That's why, as I said, I'll be sending all of our names into the Holy Kevorachel, because as we've learned here tonight, it is her prayers that are heard. And as Yirmiyahu writes, a cry is heard, Rachel is crying for her children. So says Hashem, there is hope for your future, your children shall return to their borders. And as God has promised her children, all of us, that we will return to the borders with Mashiach, please God, may it be very, very soon. Thank you. I want to just add one quick thing. I was supposed to do it at the beginning, but apparently there's some of you here who are not familiar with what we kind of do and who we are, so I'll just do a very brief summary or synopsis of what we're doing here in Randwick. There's lots of new faces that I've never met, and tonight's the first time. I hope it won't be the last. Together with Rabbi Asi, we have set up here in Randwick a little local community hub, a Chabad house called the Soul Center, and at our home we run Friday night services and Shabbos dinners and shiurim and chalabates and all the good Jewish stuff. So if you live nearby, or if you don't live nearby but are not already connected or affiliated with a community or shul, please feel free to get in touch. If you don't have my number and you've come through Wendy, or you can get it. And the other thing we do is Abraham's Tent, which is also just very close to our heart. It's a support center right now around the Randwick campus hospital that supports patients and their families going through time in hospital. Please God, with accommodation, with meals, with advocacy, with chaplaincy, with rides back and forth. There's lots of ways to get involved. We've got lots of ways of volunteers to help. In the next few weeks, we'll be mobilizing all our volunteers. So you can head out to our website and read more about it there. It's abrahamstent.org.au. And please God, none of you ever have to use our services, but if you do know of somebody there, you can always give us a call or a shout out, and we will support them the best way we can. So thank you all so much for joining us tonight, and I look forward to seeing you at future events. Thank you.